doing, what we're talking about here. There we go. Should be up now in most of those places, if not here shortly. And a lot to talk about here today. A little bit more, not exactly fallout, but more coming out from the district attorney's office anyway, in response to the push for the removal or dismissal of hundreds of cases. That's still going on this week. Of course, some major impacts from the weather we're seeing in the area, including shutdowns of Trans Mountain. Heard on good authority from at least one person that came across it earlier today that they were seeing some serious spinouts and other really, really bad weather going on there. So some rock falls further impacting that. And even beyond that, of course, delving into some of those big stories going on, including, well, the investigative stuff, and then just, let's call it crime in general going on in the region in a few kind of, I guess, mildly shocking ways, but that's just a little bit about what we're going to be talking about here today. Okay, so we should be up in all those places that we intend to be so far now. If you can't find us, can't see us, well, I don't know how you're hearing this then, but in any case, we're in a lot of places to make it the most accessible to you all. You're getting the finishing touches on some of that right now as the gremlins continue to gremlin in their own ways. But some more of the topics, of course, going on here, checking in on some of those Texas elections as well, including what are some of those really important issues that will be essentially defining not even just the gubernatorial race, though a lot of emphasis is still on that here, that impending showdown coming to November, including what some of the latest polls are showing here, including the not exactly hardening, but consistent rates that we've been seeing in those polling here. Mondo Moncada letting us know that he can hear and see us on Twitch TV and coming in clear on Facebook. Okay, good. Just a little bit of digital percussive maintenance, I guess, there. That's what we had to do. It means you turn it back on and back on because you can't hit the internet however much I would really like to sometimes. So thanks. Appreciate the note on there. Also dropping those likes and react particularly over on the Facebook. Monica Cervantes, Robbie Flores, and Flaco Jimenez. Do appreciate that as well. So, yeah, a lot to get to today. A lot of important stuff percolating through the area. And like I said, we'll definitely be checking in with our news partners over there at KFOX 14 on some of those big stories here today. So getting right off the top, because I know there's a lot of interest in it yesterday, specifically outside of just the release that was put out yesterday, or at least earlier this week in any case, by El Paso's District Attorney Yvonne Rosales, actually talking with KFOX 14 and our news partners over there about the situation. You may have heard about it, including, I do believe, coming in a little bit later this afternoon, further from our news partners at KFOX in that news update about what's going on with these cases, had mentioned that, yes, there is the ability for the DA to refile in many of these situations, particularly once, well, the statute of limitations has not elapsed yet, which can be 2 to 10 years in some of these cases. Also being pointed out that at least in some of these situations, these could be affecting victims of family assault and violence. So Child Crisis Center and other organizations in town having some level of concern with that. But so what DA Rosales in this case is saying, again, quoting directly from how she was speaking to our news partners, there has been a lot of pushback from the administration that was not asked to return, and it's been a constant harassment since day one, but we keep pushing forward, and I'm going to do the job I was elected to do, and that is to protect the citizens of this community. And calling essentially that these dismissals are a personal attack on her and her office as part of that. Then saying specifically if she was given a heads up about what the public defender in this case, Childress, El Paso County Public Defender Kelly Childress, specifically if there was any heads up given, but Rosales says that she was blindsided about this and that many of the cases were on hold due to the backlog that came over from the previous administration, along with delays in drug testing labs and hurdles brought on by the pandemic. Rosales further saying that justice will be served and we can still file criminal charges. The case is not lost. This is the most important message I want to convey to the community. So there will be more coverage on going on that from, again, our news partners over there. So RJ, to clarify, RJ asking the DA is pushing for more case dismissals. No, they're responding to the ones that have been getting pushed due to, well, as we've talked about previously with the public defender Kelly Childress, saying that some of these are past the time in which they can be filed or indicted or move forward with. So ask for them to be dismissed there. Ida Beza Gardner also chiming in with us. Appreciate that. And John Browson then saying, raining around Hawkins near the airport. Hopefully our rain totals are going up for the year. I can tell you pretty much since, well, before daybreak on my side of town anyway, west side, or we're calling that where I'm up in northwest, I don't know anymore. I guess we'll decide that as we get closer to a reality there. But was raining pretty well into the afternoon here. Not the clouds not even breaking up, but the actual rain kind of tapering off and the streets drying out a little bit as we got closer to like the 2 o'clock hour here today. But otherwise, pretty constant, and some of those arroyos and the actual culverts pretty well full. So yeah, I have no doubt we're going to be seeing some increased rain totals there. And to that point specifically, Trans Mountain Road closed until further notice, as far as we're aware. The El Paso County Sheriff's Office sending that out as a public service alert. I got the email here as well, asking, okay, for people to know that, yeah, there have been rock slides due to the heavy weather in that area. So still closed as of our most recent tweet from the office here. So please avoid the area. And again, had it on good authority from one person, new neighbor actually, saying that they saw someone behind them spin out on their way on the downslope on the western side of coming down Trans Mountain. He said that it looked like they were fine. They didn't hit anything, just a little bit rattled, didn't flip or hit anything else there. But yeah, that's an interesting one here. And then Mondo Moncada asking, is it true Texas has a $23 billion surplus for 2022? I thought it was closer to $27 billion, to be honest with you. But I mean, we've been hinting at that just a little bit, because that was something that our news partners, again, over at KFox 14, were hearing directly from Governor Greg Abbott, because he was saying that about that and, well, what might be happening and the impacts it would have on specifically the legislative session. So when they're looking at that, the Texas budget surplus, I mean, it's $27 billion. To again make it a little bit more specific there for you, a drastic increase in revenue over the last few months means more money for it, quoting some of the reporting coming from KXXV coming up immediately there. So yeah, even a little bit more than you're looking at there. So the impacts that could have on this legislative session, you may recall during the last one, in which we try to bring you some pretty complete coverage there of the major movements, and at the very least, what our state legislators are very much focused on and considering, that there was a little bit of a slowdown. I mean, we were coming into the pandemic at that point and still very in, 2020, that banner year on its own. And so a lot of things were being cut back on, considered not being spending as much, all of that. So with this, yeah, some of the things, among other things, Lieutenant Governor, rather, Dan Patrick suggesting property tax relief, and we'll see how that goes here. And Mondo saying specifically could use some street repairs here in the Escalante Park area. Pardon me. I mean, that could work, though. I don't think we're going to see maybe a direct line between that budget and those fixes here, but I'll agree with you as well. And RJ pointing out that, yeah, typical El Paso, starts raining and 5 minutes later you hear sirens. I don't necessarily have a trouble driving on the roads in these kind of conditions, having driven other places where it definitely does rain a lot more, but I definitely tend to drive slower around here when it is, because of the other people on the road. I mean, defensive driving is pretty much always a good idea, but yeah, these it's bad. I feel like I'm a cliche if I'm saying like no one knows how to drive on these roads, but seriously, very few people seem to in our area here. And Flaco Jimenez saying 27 billion builds a lot of wall. Yeah, I think there are some other priorities that are probably going to take a chunk of change out of that idea here. But as we get closer to that legislative session and the November elections before that, we're going to see a lot, and I do mean a lot of priorities getting weighed and measures here. So we'll get more into what some of those factors, what some of the polling is, in some of those gubernatorial races, as John Browston also brings up some of that surplus and rebuilding I-10 through Bassett Center to UTEP. Careful what you wish for, because in case you've missed it, that's basically on the horizon. All of these piecemeal projects we've been talking about, including that one going from essentially Mesa on the west side to the state line with New Mexico, that's just a first step in the probably, I don't really know if there's an estimate, I'm just going to ballpark it at the next decade of construction that's going to be happening on I-10. We've talked about at least one other segment of that might be happening once they're probably done with this one, or they've already had the conversations about it anyway, looking at building further south, going from essentially Mesa on the west side south through downtown until essentially the Spaghetti Bowl. And then on the other side of that, and then probably, I don't know where they'll break that one up, probably at one of the east side, Yarborough, Lee Trevino, et cetera, et cetera. And then once we get out towards the east side, interchange, Joe Battle, all that stuff. Yeah, so if you got a chance to invest in a helicopter, let's just say I've been scouring the used ones, but I ain't got another extra 40 grand to drop on that, but I might be considering it as we get closer to some of that construction here as well. In any case, due for that first break of the hour here right now, you are tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. Coming up out of this break, going to be talking further with, again, our news partners over there at KFOX 14. We do have a Stephanie S. Seifert in the studio a little bit earlier today. We've been playing what we talked with her about and some of both her major investigations and some of those other things that have been covered by them, including, well, crime is a general banner that we'll be investigating in a whole lot of ways. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot more to talk about, a lot more priorities, and a whole lot more coverage coming up after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 eastbound at the Loop, America's Avenue. Police on the scene of an accident. Joe Battle Boulevard. Crash reported northbound at Edgemere. Reports of rock slides from rains in El Paso earlier this morning on the Trans Mountain. The update is that the Trans Mountain is open in both directions. And we've got an accident reported dire north of Sun Valley. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
This week, Red Pilled America delves into the story behind what really happened with President Nixon. Understanding the ignored truth behind his story reveals a dark mission you need to know about. Listen to Red Pilled America every week on the free iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
A construction site is a noisy place where things can be misinterpreted. We need to redo the drywall. It can sound a lot like,
rewire the hull?
They're firing, Paul. Wait, what did I do?
Or even,
install a waterfall. Whose dumb idea was this?
Be on the same page at every stage with Autodesk, from the designers to the field crew to the owner of the finished building. Autodesk Construction Cloud gives everyone clarity. Now, how about that drywall?
For more than 20 years, the Window Depot has provided the best price and the biggest inventory on in-stock vinyl windows. And now the Window Depot is more than a window store, offering homeowners and contractors a one-stop warehouse full of interior and exterior doors, granite and quartz countertops, in-stock cabinetry, and flooring and tile to finish your project. Their team of professionals will help with everything from pre-kitchen design to custom orders from leading manufacturers like Milgard and Geldwin. Order online or find a location near you at thewindowdepot.com.
Maybe you've had to put off a health appointment or two during the COVID-19 pandemic. But if you're 45 or older, there's one test you shouldn't put off any longer. Regular screening for colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer is a leading cancer killer, but it can be prevented with regular screening starting at 45. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. It takes guts to put your health first. Ask your doctor about your options today. Visit cdc.gov/screen4life for more information.
Identity theft shows no signs of slowing down. In fact, more than $14 billion were stolen last year alone. Now, it can be dangerously easy to steal your identity. And LifeLock.com by Norton, they make it simple and easy to protect yourself. And if you become a victim, they're going to work to fix it for you. Now, look, no one can prevent all identity theft, but everyone can now save up to 25% off their first year when you use the promo code Hannity and call 1-800-LifeLock or just go to LifeLock.com.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back here to Talk El Paso, airing on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on our social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Comments coming in there will continue to pop up and deal with as we do throughout the rest of this the whole episode here. But as we are joined here in studio by Stephanie S. Seifert, investigative reporter with our news partners over there at KFOX 14, joining us here in studio as we do most Wednesdays. Thanks for stopping by.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be back.
absolutely happy to have you on talking about some of the in-depth stories and reporting going on here, and some that may be very directly affecting members of our audience, particularly those with some of those medical issues. Some of them have mentioned them, but given the heat and storms, and I mean, there have even been some warnings coming out, mostly on the idea of conservation and making sure electricity is available. But I mean, storms and outages, these things happen, but the kind of, I guess, maybe prolonged aspects that we're dealing with here with this very high heat, maybe not as unused to it as the rest of the state is here, but given that we've hit record usage levels, but then also the storms that we're definitely dealing with, all of these things can combine in their own way to cause power outages. Not unfamiliar with anyone, but the fact that people may rely on that power, not just as a comfort level, but again, members of our audience maybe even having medical devices that have to have electrical power to them, has been a very serious issue for literal thousands in our area.
Right. So this story looked into the amount of people who depend on electricity-powered medical devices in El Paso, and basically how many people would be at risk during an outage. And it came about because I had many people message me on Facebook telling me that they had already experienced at least 3 outages in the past couple of months. Some people had even experienced 5, one of which one man told me that the latest outage he experienced was from 7 p.m. till 4 a.m. And so that's a long time for people who depend on something that's powered by electricity. And so according to the Department of Health and Human Services, there are 7,817 Medicare beneficiaries in El Paso who depend on electricity-powered medical devices. And so that could be several things. That could be a ventilator, that could be a CPAP machine, a dialysis machine, a motorized wheelchair, an electric bed. And the list could go on of these devices. And although some of these devices can be powered by batteries, an outage that lasts more than 1, 2, 3 hours, that might be, not sustainable with batteries. Not to mention if it's an emergency where you need air. A lot of people need that air conditioning for whatever, illness they may have, where they just need to stay in a cool environment. Maybe some people need to stay in an environment that's, a controlled temperature. And so these are all factors as to why I looked into this story. And one thing to note is that since the Department of Health and Human Services only keeps data for people who are under Medicare, chances are that number could be higher. There could be people who are using medical devices that are powered by electricity who don't necessarily fall under Medicare. So that's just something to note. So I took this to El Paso Electric, which is the utility here, and asked them, what resources do people have if they depend on these types of medical devices that need power. And there is a program which requires people, an El Paso Electric customer, to fill out a form and then have their doctor fill out a form, which is then processed by El Paso Electric. And basically what it does is it gets stored in their account with El Paso Electric, so that if there is a scheduled outage, they are alerted ahead of time. Now, it's a little difficult with unplanned outages, which can sometimes be caused by the heat, by storms. Maybe a car ran into one of those poles, that carries power. And so that's a common one here. And a utility pole. And so those instances, the utility says that typically restoration time is 2 hours or less. But they do recommend that if you have to, depend on something that's powered by electricity, to have a plan before you're in an emergency. So a lot of people, maybe not even have an emergency plan for whatever the case may be, but this is something that should be also included in that, is that if there's someone in your household who depends on an electricity powered medical device, there should definitely be an emergency plan of what happens if the power goes out. What happens if the power goes out for more than 2 hours? Are we going to be okay? Or where should we go? Another option is to call 911. An ambulance can transport you to a hospital. An ambulance does have the capabilities of having, whether it's a generator or just that power, to be able to give you that oxygen or whatever it is that you need while you're being transported to the hospital. And of course, at a hospital, they also have generators. If people have generators, they're asked to not use them indoors because that could be hazardous.
Yeah, building
And
up of like carbon,
yes,
monoxide is a bad thing.
so there's just a lot of precautions to take, and obviously just having a plan ahead of time is always a safer bet than trying to act it out. Just think of it spur of the moment when you're in the middle of an emergency.
Absolutely there. And I mean, some of these things like oxygen and those machines can be definitely life-saving, but even for some of the, things you might think like, powered bed, mobility aids, people might think like, well, I mean, you're not going to die immediately if you don't need those. And that may be technically correct, but particularly we're talking about some of those longer outages, like you were mentioning there, these things can significantly affect. I mean, what if there is then another emergency? It's not always just the first one there because, it has happened in the past. So the effect of these things not always being available and then impacting people's ability to get around to do what they need to can be severely impacting of life here. So it's pretty serious on almost all those levels.
Right. Just something to keep in mind, because I don't think people think about these things until it's actually happening to them. And so just keeping that in mind, having an emergency plan, always useful. And knowing what your resources are. If you're not signed up for that program, looking into it. I do have a link to that program on the web story for this particular story on our website, kfoxtv.com.
Again, that one titled, Power Outages Could Pose Risk for People Dependent on Electricity-Powered Medical Devices. Again, talking right now with Estefania Seifert, investigative reporter with our partners over there at KFOX14. If you want to find that story and the rest of them, kfoxtv.com. Click under the KFOX14 Investigates tab. And so you also have, of course, some things that we talked about briefly last week that were airing right after our report last week as well, including some updates and maybe even further reporting coming on the whole situation involving El Paso water and the state of New Mexico water rights and sewage discharges. It's a complicated subject, which is why you're probably been doing some more follow-ups, right?
Right. So I had let you all know that the story that I was working on last week, that aired last week, was a follow-up to the New Mexico Environment Department fining El Paso water for the Frontera main break when sewage was being diverted into the Rio Grande.
Right.
And so they were fining them $1.2 million for that. And part of the claims that the New Mexico Environmental Department made were that El Paso water did not notify them of this situation, did not tell them that they were going to be dumping the sewage into the Rio Grande. And so when I saw the back and forth press releases from both agencies, first it started with the New Mexico Environment Department saying, we're finding El Paso water. And then El Paso water sent a press release basically denying those claims and then showing, we have, our own documents and proof to show that wasn't the case. I went ahead and filed open records for those documents that El Paso water was talking about. And I wanted to see them for myself. And I got 3 files. It was 2 emails. One was from El Paso water, and it was sent to multiple agencies in Chihuahua, in New Mexico, and in El Paso. Entities that would be involved, government entities, that would want to be involved in knowing about this emergency.
Right.
And the second file was an email from the Environmental Protection Agency acknowledging that they would be looking into this, that there would be an inspection performed. That third file was the inspection. And so what I noticed is that in the email that El Paso Water sent to all of the relating agencies, the New Mexico Environment Department was included in that email. And so the inspection report, when I was looking through that, I found that the New Mexico Environment Department was also part of that inspection. They took part in conducting that inspection. And so I went to the New Mexico Environment Department and I asked them, it looks like you all were involved in this process from the beginning, from the day that they were going to begin diverting the sewage into the Rio Grande. Help me understand your claims as to we were never told about this. I did not hear back for months, really. I started looking into this probably a month and a half ago.
Okay.
Possibly 2 months ago. I had sent at least 9-10 emails to the spokesperson for the New Mexico Environmental Department. I had made calls to the spokesperson. At one point, I was told that they were getting too many inquiries and that they didn't have time to get to mine. And so the day that the story was going to air, which was last Wednesday, I reached out to the New Mexico governor's office, and I basically told him the situation. You know, I've been trying to reach out to the New Mexico Environmental Department, trying to get this information, and I'm not hearing back. And immediately I heard back from the spokesperson from the New Mexico Environmental Department, and he provided an explanation as to why they went ahead with fining El Paso Water. And they say that the email that El Paso Water used to notify them was incorrect, that there was a misspelling in the name of one of the people who was part of the New Mexico Environmental Department and was included in that email. And so therefore, that department says that they were notified by basically a third party, a second agency was the one who forwarded that information to them. So they say that they indirectly found out about the situation, not directly. They also say that El Paso Water didn't follow up after the fact. They have a timeline, and they basically lay it out, and I have all of this, the exact information of what was sent to me by the department on the web story, if you all want to check it out, just because it's very detailed.
Oh, yeah.
And so after this story aired, I did reach out to El Paso Water to see if they had any comment to this, to their response to the New Mexico Environmental Department. And it looks like they will be filing an appeal to all of this. And there's already been things put in motion for this. And so there's definitely a follow-up to this that I'm working on in the coming days as to what El Paso Water's response is to all of this now.
Yeah, and again, so you mentioned there the documents of what you're talking about here, definitely in the story as well. Again, I guess right now, Estefania Seifert with our news partners there at KFOX 14, and you want to find these stories over there on the KFOX 14 Investigates tab on kfoxtv.com. But of course, we have a story coming up tonight as well.
Yes, I do. So tonight, going back to the story of the lifeguard shortage
and the facilities closure, all these connected things that we've talked about quite a lot. Yeah.
Right. So because so many people keep reaching out about it, you know, it's reduced hours or some pools are closed. I mean, it's definitely affected a lot of people this summer. And so the stories just don't stop with this. And so the story that I'm working on tonight has to do with possible solutions to this that don't necessarily have to do with increasing the pay for lifeguards or incentives for lifeguards. It's geared more towards the YMCA. I had asked them when I heard that the city and the county were having issues with shortages with lifeguards. I asked the Y because they also have several pools, if they also had a shortage of lifeguards, and they said no, we train year round. In fact, we have lifeguards on hand if the city and county need them. And I thought that was interesting because they in fact do need lifeguards. And so I looked into why then are they not being used? Is there a possible partnership that could be happening there or not? And if not, I want to know why. And so that's what the story is about tonight.
Again, you can find that'll be airing tonight, KFOX 14 News at 9, and of course online thereabouts. Again, over on the KFOX 14 Investigates tab on kfoxtv.com. Again, Estefania Seifert, investigative reporter with our news partners there, talking with more here in this coming segment about some of the other big stories happening on in the area. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. The Socorro School District fired its chief of police on Tuesday night. The Socorro Board of Trustees voted 4-2 last night to terminate the contract for Jose Castorena. Earlier this year, he was placed on administrative leave. Administrators would not comment on why he was fired. He's been employed with the Socorro ISD for 26 years. A public defender in El Paso County has filed to dismiss 435 pending cases because the time for El Paso's DA to indict the suspects is running out. Kelly Childress said that about 190 cases have already been dismissed in the past 2 days. The cases involve misdemeanors and some felonies, including DWIs, assault on security officers, drug possession, and cases involving people accused of family violence. DA Yvonne Rosales says her office is still capable of filing charges as the cases are still within the statute of limitations, which can range from 2 to 10 years. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
A tropical low to our south and west will bring more clouds, rain, and cooler weather to much of the area. Expect a mostly cloudy sky tonight with a 40% chance for some scattered rain and a few embedded storms. Overnight lows will also cool into the middle 60s in Las Cruces and upper 60s in El Paso. Coming up tonight, we'll talk about how long this cool and rainy pattern will last. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Kira Miner.
This report is sponsored by Allstate. Are you a safe driver? Are you looking to save money? With DriveWise from Allstate, the safer you drive, the more you can save. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
Almost 3 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage, the world's only nose cleaner that helps flush out airborne germs with powered suction. But what do doctors have to say about Navage? Here's Dr. Tonya Farmer, a board-certified ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Most airborne allergens and viruses enter through your nose. When that happens, it can cause congestion and irritation, and that just makes you feel miserable. You can get a cold, you can get flu, sinus infections, or even worse. Flushing your nose with a saline solution is the most effective way to flush all of those dangerous threats out of your nose. So now when patients come in my office, I tell them I highly recommend that you use Navage on a daily basis for overall good health and wellness.
And Navage is all natural and drug-free at Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
The El Conquistador Tucson, a Hilton resort, welcomes our neighbors from El Paso. We're your perfect staycation getaway, far enough away down I-10 with amazing hiking trails. This summer, we're knocking 20% off all food and beverage for our El Paso neighbors. HiltonElConquistador.com.
This week, Red Pilled America delves into the story behind what really happened with President Nixon. Understanding the ignored truth behind his story reveals a dark mission you need to know about. Listen to Red Pilled America every week on the free iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Welcome back here to Talk El Paso, airing on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the many Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch.tv outlets we're on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. This is not to say that we neglect our on-air audience. We're up there in the very many ways and get us there as well. So if you're staying in your car right now, stay safe out there, particularly with the weather conditions we have been encountering. But talk more about some of the other larger reaching and ongoing stories in our region here. Still joined by Estefania Seifert, investigative reporter with our news partners over there at KFOX 14. Thanks for sticking around with us.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Absolutely. When we met you here to start this recorded segment here, had your weather jacket on in anticipation of today's weather. So y'all will, of course, be having comprehensive coverage of all of those situations as we're looking at a pretty soggy day out there and any of the serious impacts you all be getting to. But some of the more ongoing and, well, further reaching stories, maybe even than this, has been going on with, I hesitate to call it crime overall, but I know that there's been a level of concern that has come with it. But breaking it down more specifically, we've talked about the level of vehicle-involved migrant smuggling efforts that have been going on around here, specifically one that happened right across the street from us at Como's Italian, where I think coming in here today, I think I spied it. You can still see the damage to the building at the corner where an SUV, looks like a suburban, maybe Tahoe kind of thing, crashed into it. And Border Patrol has actually said they're considering that and some of the other ones that have been going on as a bailout incident. We've been talking about that for a minute because there are some strange confluences, including the notification systems in Uvalde that were part of the state report. But when we're talking about it locally here and what we're seeing, it does seem that, I mean, just from the reporting y'all have done, that there's more, very least, of these kind of serious incidents, including one that happened a few weeks ago, that there are now some, indictments coming down in.
Right. So the Como's one was the most recent, but we've started to see several of these incidents. When we first started seeing them, it would be more so in the Santa Teresa area, in like a country club road. That's where we were seeing these, as officials call them, bailouts. And so Border Patrol explains that a bailout is when smugglers are instructed by transnational criminal organizations to not stop when law enforcement is trying to stop them or trying to pull over a driver. So then that obviously is prompting a chase, which is what we saw in that situation with the Como's restaurant. And sometimes the driver is able to ditch the scene, or sometimes they crash, and that was the case in this instance as well. And also in instances where we've seen that happen in Country Club Road as well, it usually ends in a crash. And they're describing these incidents as bailouts.
Because then the idea is then that everyone bails out of the vehicle and essentially scatters. So I think an image that may exist in people's minds may be kind of like I consider it more tied to like the 90s of people like, say, in like Tijuana and San Diego, like swarming like areas of the border to just overwhelm the barriers and that kind of a thing here. It's not exactly the same here, but essentially a mobile version of that, essentially, that they will then scatter in order to, as much as possible, evade authorities. But the fact that it often involves a crash and property damage is part of it, just taking it to a whole another level, really.
Right. So in this particular incident that happened at the Como's restaurant, there were 5 migrants that were found inside of that vehicle that crashed into the building. To the side, there was damage, exterior damage.
Right.
Nothing too severe.
Didn't go
to
like
the building.
through a
Right.
wall or anything, hit a corner there. But again, as of today, at least I thought I could still see that damage.
Yeah, and the drivers are they say that they're told to not stop, and so in this case, they were trying to basically stop the driver, pull him over for a traffic stop, and that's what ultimately led to the chase because the driver would not stop.
Right.
And yeah, we're starting to see these a lot more frequently, which is why we've been inquiring with Border Patrol and with our local officials as to just the safety of drivers, just because now it feels like it's happening in more common driving areas as opposed to in Santa Teresa. So that's something that we're definitely still pressing them on, trying to get more answers as to how exactly they handle these types of bailouts.
Yeah, some responses I've gotten from CBP and some other things they've been looking at is their own policies at it, and that actually was involved in one of the first in this series, I guess you could put here. None of these incidents are necessarily directly connected, but ads has been getting a lot more notice and a lot more serious consequences from it. That incident from almost last month, actually, here. I think it was actually on, if I have the date here, happening, definitely in the early part of, early this month, late last month, July 29th. Some of the reporting going on there, what happened on, Country Club Road, kind of what you're mentioning there, but also there on in Santa Teresa, and where it was a rollover that left a couple dead, including and many injured. So some of the incidents we're seeing where there aren't even the ability to bail out were because the crashes are so egregious. People are left injured. I think 9 from that one had to go to the hospital as well. So that happening in Santa Teresa. And so that one kind of, at least when it comes to the reporting going on the area, one of the more egregious incidents and one of the kind of starting points for, I think, the real consideration of this is happening more often with that one. And of course, in that one, 2 brothers now being charged with conspiracy, as you all are reporting as of this week.
Right. So for that particular story about the 2 brothers, and I'm trying to pull up the web story here, as you mentioned, this one was in Santa Teresa. 2 brothers from Mexico, and now they're facing federal charges for fleeing U.S. authorities. They crashed the vehicle, killing the 2, as you mentioned. They injured 10, and this was close to the international border. We did have the names for them. It was Jorge Garcia Rascon and Julio Garcia Rascon. They are in custody. They're pending a trial, and based on the criminal complaints that were filed by the district court, the brothers, they had been smuggled themselves. And so the elder brother told authorities that they were transporting other migrants to pay off the debt that they had that were being brought to the United States.
Yeah, they had also mentioned as part of there, and as part of y'all reporting there, that they had done this at least once previously, transporting people from El Paso to Albuquerque, and were paid $500 per person. So we're not, I mean, the money has always been kind of an underlying component of this, maybe not as obvious in the incidents we see in this area, but the motivations behind it and why it's happening in our area, very obviously a part of it, because we are talking about pretty immediately anytime we get into this thousands of dollars, if not tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars involved with it. And some of the incidents with the stash houses, I mean, this stuff is continuing, almost seems to be ramping up in our area. It's hard to put a exact analysis point on this here, but very least with the incidents and the way that you all reporting on it, that last week with 27 either arrested and then at least 21 charged. And then we're not even talking about those being transported, just the transporteurs, the smugglers themselves here. There seems to be, at the very least in this short term, a lot of that going on.
Yeah, so Border Patrol reported that for the past fiscal year, agents working in New Mexico and part of Texas, which is in this particular area, which is like Santa Teresa, El Paso, that they had located more than 175 stash houses, at which 1,975 migrants were found. So yeah, this is something that we're definitely starting to see a little bit more of, stash houses, bailouts, and so forth.
Absolutely. Again, that's Stephanie Seifert, investigative reporter with our news partners over there at KFOX 14. You want to find out all the reporting we're talking about, including her in-depth and investigative reporting. You can find that at kfoxtv.com, and for her reporting under the KFOX 14 Investigates tab. But continuing our little bit of discussion on kind of crime in general, switching to a slightly different gear here. Some more information coming out on the two teens that were arrested and that string of burglaries that happened, some of them being mentioned as of last week, but actually more specifically that there were actually 15 burglaries kind of conducted over the entire month of July, basically.
Right. So it was a 17-year-old and a 16-year-old who were arrested. They were taken into custody. This was the first week of August because from July 6th through the 29th, they had been burglarizing West Side businesses, particularly in front of Franklin High School. So that's where we have like places like Burritos Crisostomo, La Estrella Meat Market, and there's like a supplement store there, and it's all of those little that commercial strip of stores that were being hit. And I think it was a week or two later that we got the press release that there had been 2 arrests made in connection to that string of burglaries. But yeah, it was I believe you mentioned 15, right? Yeah, 15 burglaries 15 in West El Paso.
Different burglaries, and ranging kind of from Donovan to Mesa to Red Road to that strip, kind of the last series of it there before they were pulled over on an unrelated offense here on August 3rd. And that strip of areas that was kind of part of it. And you all have the video, of course, from kind of right across from Franklin High School across Wrestler there. So it's been kind of going on there for a while there. The fact that it took a whole month here is interesting, able to do this over the course of a month here and then pulled over on something unrelated. It just, its own level of concern there. And so, yeah, but then also related to the mansion parties that have been going on here when it comes to, let's just call it in general, juvenile criminal activity or criminal activity involving juveniles. Those mansion parties, we of course talked about that yesterday in regards to the restraining orders and injunctions and things like that being put in because of that happening out in the Homestead Meadows North area. More information on the affidavit coming out as well on exactly the level of response being required and how sheriff's deputies out in that part of the county have been overwhelmed by this, by the hundreds, in fact.
Right. So this has been promoted on social media, as you mentioned, and in order to get in, you have to pay. So they're for-profit parties.
Oh, yeah.
And so the affidavit, it shows that the owner of the property, Priscilla Chavez, and her son, Gabriel Chavez, who own Mansion Promotions, LLC, they're the ones that are currently indicted for money laundering. The son is required to register quarterly as a sex offender for aggravated sexual assault of a child. That's according to the county attorney's office.
Mm-hmm.
And they are both accused in the lawsuit for using social media to advertise parties where they're charging a fee for entrance to the property. And typically these parties start at 10 p.m. They go well into the next day. And they're attracting hundreds of young people. And I think it's a concern to law enforcement just because of the level of incidents that they're seeing coming from these types of parties. They're to the point there's even been deaths.
Right.
But of course, just assaults and whatnot. And so that's why I think this has become so big is because it's really grown into this out of control party that, like I mentioned, in some cases has even resulted in death.
Right, and that might be what really brought this to a head as a part of it here, but even warnings were going out before this point, an increasing response here, but some more detail from the affidavits as well as that patrol officers in the area have been kind of sounding alarm about this for a minute because we're calling it, quote, unenforceable at that point in time, because even just some of the parking situations with people blocking fire hydrants, blocking driveways, blocking residential areas, or even parking in the middle of the street, and how even getting tows that far out east in the county here was difficult. And then the ages of people, them quoting some as young as like 15 headed out there, and the full affidavit over there on the article that you all have as well. So can see that, I mean, they're not even able to give out citations because of the literal hundreds and the less than half dozen actual deputies able to head out there. So I mean, specifically referring to on June 18th, 150 to 200 juveniles walking in and out of the party here. And so it's been a level of concern for that community as well. So this more detail coming out about this will be very interesting to see what the continued response, both from law enforcement and local officials, particularly with the county and such, will be.
Right, and this particular affidavit that you mentioned, it also shows that the sheriff's office has responded to assaults, aggravated assaults, shots fired, medical emergencies, and just in general that like neighbor who calls because it's too loud.
Yeah, it's again been at the very least a nuisance for a lot of this, and at least one case is Narcan deployed out there. So I mean, it's not just a rager and alcohol being used, but narcotics and other things. So this has been a problem for a while now. So it'll be, again, very interesting to see how this response continues on there. But again, for this and all the stories we've been talking about here today with Stephanie Cipher, investigative reporter with our news partners over there at KFOX 14, all of these stories, kfoxtv.com. And of course, also under the KFOX 14 Investigates tab for your stories, including the ones we got coming up here. So as always, if people want to get a hold of you, suggest some of these investigative reports and in-depth reporting that you do, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
So some of you have reached out through social media. That works. If not, you can email me at eyseyffert@kfoxtv.com.
All right. Well, Stephanie, thank you very much for checking in with us about all the big stories and in-depth stories y'all been working on, as we do most Wednesdays here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely happy to have you on. And we got to take that next break right now because of that. So coming out of this break, we will go ahead and open up those phone lines. So that number to dial, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On Gateway North at Paisano Drive, a crash there has got the left lane blocked. I-10 westbound at Paisano, a stalled semi is blocking the left shoulder. An accident, Joe Battle Boulevard northbound at Pebble Hills, that's blocking the right lane with police and fire on the scene. I-10 is slow, eastbound between Piedras and Trowbridge with 5-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Staples Stores. Staples has everything you need for school at prices that won't hold you back. 24-count Crayola crayons and Polly Pocket folders are 50 cents. Select backpacks and lunch sets are $14.99. In-store only. Offer ends 8/27, limit 30. Backpacks end 8/20. Send your kids forward to school at Staples.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager of Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Once again, we were El Paso's #1 dealer in new Chrysler Dodge Jeep and Ram sales in July. Thank you, El Paso and surrounding areas.
How did you do that again?
We have the best inventory and the best prices in town with exceptional trade-in values.
You heard the boss. Get big savings on every new and certified pre-owned vehicle in our huge inventory. Save thousands in interest with 0% APR for 72 months on new 2022 Dodge Chargers and Challengers. Plus, huge savings and super low 2.9% APR for 72 months on 2022 Ram trucks. All military personnel and all first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Trade and upgrade for less during the Make This a Summer event at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying a car is fun at I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina El Paso strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 0 APR is $13.89 and 2.9% APR is $15.15 per thousand finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development, the El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
For more than 20 years, the Window Depot has provided the best price and the biggest inventory on in-stock vinyl windows. And now the Window Depot is more than a window store, offering homeowners and contractors a one-stop warehouse full of interior and exterior doors, granite and quartz countertops, in-stock cabinetry, and flooring and tile to finish your project. Their team of professionals will help with everything from free kitchen design to custom orders from leading manufacturers like Milgard and Geldwin. Order online or find a location near you at thewindowdepot.com.
Groucho Marx is an American comedy legend, but he kept to himself as the years went on. We'll bring you the story of Marx's personal historian during the final years of his life. Be sure to listen to this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso. Some of y'all's comments just get to me. We'll get to a whole lot more of those here. We do have that phone line open. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Super out of time here for this segment, but we'll be back, of course, after the top of the hour news, and that with more. Hour 2 of the program here, and we'll definitely delve further into those calls here. One thing I want to address there, Flaco Jimenez brought in right before the interviews there, that yes, Trans Mountain is now open both directions, and actually, since we talked there, TxDOT has clarified that no, it was never actually closed, and that was a mistake here, tweeting at themselves that there are small rocks in the shoulders, but the roadway is open. Our crews have been sweeping and will continue monitoring the area. So please drive with care and always due to conditions. But yes, it is open. So yeah, update there. Trans Mountain is open, but I mean, with that weather and the way people drive around here, be safe. And we got a lot of discussion going on things, including recycled water. We'll get to that and a whole lot more again after this break at the top of the hour news. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Back in a minute.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On Gateway North at Paisano Drive, a crash there has got the left lane blocked. I-10 westbound at Paisano, a stalled semi is blocking the left shoulder. An accident Joe Battle Boulevard northbound at Pebble Hills, that's blocking the right lane with police and fire on the scene. I-10 is slow, eastbound between Piedras and Trowbridge with 5-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
No Hollywood release can match it.
It's worth the wait. Who complains?
No television drama can equal it.
That was the scariest episode of your show.
And nothing else comes close to the drama.
This is unbelievable.
And you know what? Quite frankly, this scares people.
Join the conversation. We have seen this movie before. We know
News
that it
on the
doesn't
hour
end well.
and the half. Traffic with El Paso's News Radio
690
KTSM, KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Americans' support of President Biden is ticking up slightly. The Politico Morning Consult survey finds Biden at 42% approval, up from 39% last week. The number of respondents who disapproved dropped from 59 to 56%. The director of the CDC is admitting the agency's performance during the COVID-19 pandemic did not reliably meet expectations. Dr. Rochelle Walensky added her agency had been preparing for something like that for 75 years. She said her new goals for the CDC going forward are accountability, collaboration, communication, and timeliness. Another 10 illegal immigrants caught crossing the southern border have popped up on a terror screening database. Lisa Taylor has more.
That's according to new numbers for July, which were released this week by Homeland Security. That brings the total this fiscal year to 66. Overall, the number of Border Patrol encounters dropped for a second straight month, but remain at record highs. In a statement, the head of Customs and Border Protection claims the slight drop is proof the president's policies are working. An ad campaign, which started this spring, warned would-be asylum seekers of the dangers of their journey.
White teachers will be laid off first, regardless of experience and tenure, under Minnesota's teachers' contract. Kofi Manska from the Black advocacy group Take Charge Minnesota thinks this is a really bad idea.
You cannot solve past discrimination with more discrimination. Racism in and of itself is evil and it's illegal.
The agreement is part of a new contract starting in 2023 between the Minneapolis Federation of Teachers and Minneapolis Public Schools. R. Kelly is being accused of having sex with minors and then paying witnesses off to get rid of the evidence. That's according to prosecutors who said Kelly has a dark side that he kept hidden from the world. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. More clinics in suburban New York City are offering the polio vaccine amid heightened concern about the disease. Sarah Lee Kessler reports.
The Rockland County Health Department is giving polio shots today and next Wednesday in Spring Valley, next Thursday in Pomona. This after an unvaccinated Rockland County man developed paralytic polio, the first polio case in the U.S. since 2013. The CDC says the highly contagious virus may have been circulating under the radar for a year. It's now known that it turned up in Orange County wastewater last April and in Rockland wastewater in May.
Stephen Avery's new lawyer says there's a third suspect that needs to be questioned in the case against the subject of the Making a Murderer documentary. The argument is that investigators didn't fully look at other suspects while investigating Avery for the 2005 murder of Teresa Halbach. The Japanese government's decision to organize a state funeral for assassinated former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has sparked demonstrations in Tokyo. Tasanka Sirapala says protesters believe the state funeral violates the Constitution and romanticizes Abe's controversial politics.
Public opposition for Shinzo Abe's state funeral is heating up as the government prepares invitations for international dignitaries. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and former U.S. President Barack Obama say they plan to attend the event, which is scheduled for September 27th. Prime Minister Fumio Kishida says the event will commemorate Abe's contribution to Japan and will be a symbol that democracy will triumph over violence. Tasanka Sirapala in Tokyo.
The San Antonio Spurs are trying to set an NBA attendance record. The team is out with plans to play one game this season at the Alamo Dome. That football stadium will be set up to seat 65,000 fans. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Now your chance at $1,000 and a trip to our 2022 iHeartRadio Music Festival. Text the nationwide keyword WIN to 200-200. You'll get a confirmation text and info. Standard data and message rates apply in this nationwide contest. That's WIN to 200-200.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
This week, Red Pilled America delves into the story behind what really happened with President Nixon. Understanding the ignored truth behind his story reveals a dark mission you need to know about. Listen to Red Pilled America every week on the free iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
If you're 45 or older, this message could save your life. Health experts now recommend starting regular colorectal cancer screening at age 45. Colorectal cancer is the leading cause of cancer death, but it's preventable through regular screening. There are more screening options than ever before, including at-home tests. You've got the guts to prevent colorectal cancer. Talk to your doctor about your options and visit cdc.gov/screenforlife for more information.
M1EP.com. Superior multifamily property management services citywide.
Hey you, do you like sports? Of course you do. But how much do you actually know about the history of sports in this country? If you're not 100% sure about that, check out the new podcast, The Untold History of Sports in America, presented by One Day University. This podcast celebrates the ceremony and examines the controversial storylines around sports in America. Listen to The Untold History of Sports in America from One Day University on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello?
Mike, this is Norma Jean at Sergio Lewis Body Shop near the airport. Have you seen Sergio?
I'm expecting him in a few minutes to cut a new commercial.
I'm really worried about him, Mike. He really believes he's a poet. It's gone to his head.
There's plenty of room up there. Anyways, his poetry isn't that bad.
Will you please have him call the shop?
Sure, Norma.
That's Norma Jean, Mike. Gotta go.
Eee, she's feisty. Hey, Sergio, there you are.
Hey, Mike, I have this great new poem. Check this out, man. Sometimes even our darkest moments are enlightening. Hey, what's so funny, man?
Nothing, Sergio, really. By the way, Norma Jean called.
Really? What did she want?
Oh, she was just telling me what a big fan she is of your poetry, Sergio. Sergio Lewis Body Shop at 3800 Admiral near the airport, where it's the customer's choice, not the insurance company's, and there's a lifetime warranty on all collision repair. 593-0191.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of stuff we're talking about here today, including more response analysis, etc., going on with those public defender cases set to be dismissed. 435 of them here. I think RJ may have missed the message on that slightly, him saying 435 members of Congress. But no, not that I'm aware of it, just local cases with the District Attorney Yvonne Rosales responding to our news partners over at KFOX 14 on the subject here. And a surprising amount of debate on wastewater and sewage treatment, I guess, here. John Browselton stating and really working to down this hill there. The city's wastewater can be cleaned up and recycled for everyday uses, including drinking water. It's good enough for the International Space Station and Navy submarines. Why not desert cities like El Paso? More than a little bit of skepticism from some of the comments there as well, but John standing his ground. Flaco Jimenez saying, you try it first and let us know how it works here. Sean Gardner saying, they dumped raw sewage into the canal on the west side for months, and you want us to trust them to recycle to drinking water quality? You try it first. And, well, I'll actually agree with Ion Grimm here. Ion Grimm, that's saying that they already do that for a water. I definitely grew up in this area thinking that essentially that's what already was done, but it was actually my surprise that not exactly. They do it for the purple pipe projects. I haven't seen one of those actively being worked on, or the pipes themselves for a minute here, but those all non-potable water projects, yeah, that is recycled, reclaimed. I'm not quite sure what the totally correct word for it is there, but yes, there is usage of that, including some of the recharge sites are being done, but in general, either comes from our aquifers or from the Rio Grande here, and a lot more there. Commentary, including RJ commenting on that situation with the Mansion Party House, saying they need to smell weed and enter with 100 deputies and troopers. Really, the size of the response was the big issue there, with only a handful of deputies, sheriff's deputies, because this is, of course, not within city limits. It's complicated, so the steps being taken now are probably significant towards dealing with that. But again, thanks to our news partners, Stephanie Seifert specifically there for talking to us about that. So we do, of course, have the phone lines open now. That number to call is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Lines just filled up, actually. So let's start getting to some of those. We do have Raul in the Northeast in the line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Well, earlier this week, big thing happened. President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act. Also, other accomplishments, the CHIP Act, the PACT Act, the bipartisan gun law, killed an al-Qaeda leader. Gas prices have been plummeting. They're around $3.24 here in El Paso. Huge job numbers. All the jobs that were lost during the pandemic have been recovered. Low unemployment, lowest in 50 years. Confirmation of the first Black female Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, leading the support for Ukraine. Expansion of NATO, including Finland and Sweden, the American Rescue Plan, the bipartisan infrastructure plan and law. Trump talked about infrastructure bill for 4 years, never got it done. And the Senate negotiating an update to the Electoral Count Act. Now, what happened to the America Trump made great? He didn't make it great. He made it sicker, poor, and ever more divided. Trump said he was going to make America wealthy. Trump didn't eliminate poverty in America or homeless vets. Trump didn't significantly reduce the 60% of Americans who can't afford to come up with $1,000 without having to sell something or borrow the money. Trump didn't build a wall, and Mexico didn't pay for it. Trump didn't round up the 11 million illegal workers in the United States and deport them. Trump didn't replace Obamacare with improved Trump care. North Korea did not denuclearize. Trump sucked. And now he's really screwed. And by the way, Eric Hershelman, another former White House attorney, has been subpoenaed by a federal grand jury investigating the attack on the Capitol. Lock him up.
Again, okay. I'll say this. I appreciated the first part of what you were talking about there and putting forth what you like to see happening and responding to people who have said, talk about what you like to see. So sure, even if there are some finer points in there, I also appreciate you saying that, yes, jobs have been recovered as opposed to the largest job increase, because that just felt a little, even for me, too Orwellian there. Because seriously, the way that we've seen this at the best bungee jump kind of thing, like sharp decline and sure, maybe a somewhat of a return, but never probably quite gotten to that level, though there are further concerns with the actual size of the labor force we've been talking about here. So sure, unemployment may be low, but the actual size, absolute amount of people represented in that is also lower than it was, even though that gets complicated in the way we get into that. And just as a note also from our news partners over at KFOX 14, doing some more talk about what local recession might mean or might look like, or measuring those kind of things there, talking with some familiar faces, including UTEP professor Tom Fullerton on that, as we did last week. But to say, okay, let's just put it case in point here. And I know we had a lot of people talking yesterday about the elections and about Liz Cheney specifically and Wyoming, all of those things here. So let's just say, again, not particularly surprised on your viewpoint whenever it comes to the former president. You've made no exact secret on it. But when it comes to actually then dealing with that, you can rant and rave against this person all that you want. But when you look at the impact that is going forward and trying to change that, I'm not exactly going to say that you're not convincing anyone, because I'm not going to say that is necessarily needing to be the point here, though I also think it is a point on its own here. But more specifically, that even with issues, and I have plenty, I can pick a president, but even with the former president, about way things were handled that I disagreed with in my own right, even if there were some that I certainly did agree with, when it comes down to the actual impact of what you think going forward, what is going to happen there. I mean, we look at some of this. I mean, there's been a lot of analysis in the aftermath of both last night and then just in general, how those in National Republican Party and in the many elections that have come up around that have fared. A number retired, just throwing in the towel that way, but also a number have not been able to progress. Notable exception on that was Murkowski up there, and of course in Alaska. But there's some more complicated there things, including the potential return of Sarah Palin, which is, I mean, I guess I shouldn't be that surprised given the way that the last couple of years have gone politically, but still a little bit interesting. I'll take her over Blagojevich in terms of people returning from the past there and reseeking political office here. But still, the fact that this is still coming up here, I mean, the real, what you want to see happen from this, I guess, and I gather, I'm going to assume as much as can be done without making so-and-so out of you and me, is that you don't want the former president to be able to run for election or get reelected again. And yet, I'm not sure that doing it this way is going to accomplish that goal if that's truly what you want, because there is still a pretty firm amount of control, if only from fundraising, but also endorsements, all those kind of things coming from this. So what I would encourage you to do, if you truly want to do that, is, I mean, sure, you're entitled to your opinion, and as much as I don't like repetition, we'll take it with a grain of salt on it, is wondering about what you're going to do to then organize around it. Because if we're not organizing what we want to see happen in political goals and things like that, they're probably not going to happen unless you've got one hell of a zeitgeist moment going on and you're just right in the vein of what's already happening, in which case you're still not really impacting it. You're just going with the flow that way. Anyway, let's get at least one more call on the line here before we get to that. So thank you for the point in the call for what it's worth. At least one more call on the line here before we hit that next break. We do have Frankie and Messi on the line here with us right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
All right. I want to tell you something. I listened to Liz Cheney's speech yesterday. I heard it 3 times. It was masterful. He just nailed it. Just nailed it. What a beautiful combination of words. But I want to zero in on this one thing that she said. She said, quote, Hagman got more votes than I did. She won. I conceded the race to her. This primary is over. End of story, moving on. Think about what that just meant, everybody out there in Southwest border region. She actually admitted she lost. She didn't come out and say, hey, this was rigged. I've been robbed. Great steal. Let's attack the capital of the United States. I'm telling you conservatives out there, not only is she a good-looking babe, but you have got the correct leader. She's conservative. She admitted it. She didn't say, hey, I'm going to rethink my thought process. She says, I'm a Republican conservative. You people out there, you conservatives, you Donnie Doton, doofus-loving nut jobs, this is the person you need to follow, not that Cheeto-flavored jerk with that yellow cotton candy on his head. That's what I want to say.
All right. Well, fair enough. Entitled to your opinion there. Thank for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
All right, then.
I mean, as much as we don't usually talk about other states' elections here, yes, I understand this one is definitely significant and why it'll probably be getting analyzed more. And I will fully expect this isn't probably the last, maybe in the state, but probably honestly other states we're going to be seeing of Liz Cheney. I mean, the one of the things she said at the end of the speech, I do believe, is the primary election is over, but now the real work begins. So, yeah, if you were thinking that this would be the last moment on the stage here, wouldn't hold your breath on that one anywhere, anyone considering that. But, well, a lot of stuff coming in with these elections and some stuff on the Texas elections as well. I don't want to lose sight on there with polling here in Texas showing that that lead keeping more or less consistent here. More recently, UT Tyler poll showing that O'Rourke's behind Governor Greg Abbott, of course, about 7 points here, about 46 to 39%, and more analysis coming out about that, but more specifically delving into some of those issues. Tell you what, we'll get into more on the calls and of course more on the comments and on these points here after this next break. Due for that one here already. So if you're on the line, stay there. Otherwise, if you want to call in, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On Gateway North at Paisano Drive, an accident there is blocking the left lane and the turnaround lane to Gateway South. On Gateway South at Ramp D near the I-10, a crash rollover accident is blocking just the left shoulder, but it's enough to cause delays. A backup to Montana Avenue right now. Joe Battle Boulevard northbound at Pebble Hills, there's a crash there that's blocking the right lane. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Allstate. Don't drive much, don't pay much with pay-per-mile insurance from Allstate. Life is good when you're in the driver's seat. At Allstate, better protection costs a whole lot less. Visit allstate.com or call an agent for a quote today.
Almost 3 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage, the world's only nose cleaner that helps flush out airborne germs with powered suction. But what do doctors have to say about Navage? Here's Dr. Tonya Farmer, a board-certified ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Most airborne allergens and viruses enter through your nose. When that happens, it can cause congestion and irritation, and that just makes you feel miserable. You can get a cold, you can get flu, sinus infections, or even worse. Flushing your nose with a saline solution is the most effective way to flush all of those dangerous threats out of your nose. So now when patients come in my office, I tell them I highly recommend that you use Navage on a daily basis for overall good health and wellness.
And Navage is all natural and drug-free at Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E, clean nose, healthy life.
Do you think it's okay to drive stoned? The truth is your reaction times slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Stop kidding yourself. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
Welcome to Allstate, where you can really control your savings. Because when you drive less, you save more with pay per mile. So you're really in control of your savings, only paying for the miles you drive. Yeah, life is good when you're in the driver's seat. Allstate. Here, better protection costs a whole lot less. You're in good hands with Allstate. Click, call, or visit allstate.com to save today.
Not available in every state. Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company, Norfolk, Illinois.
It can happen easily. A few drinks become a few too many. It's time to go, and you think of calling for a ride home. Nah, what's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over, you lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.
180 over 111, and I had a stroke. I couldn't speak or walk.
This is high blood pressure. Get back on your plan. Go to loweryourhbp.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. I reference the comments a lot because, A, it's one of the more interactive ways we can get in on our show here, but sometimes they just, if you hear me snickering during the break, that's why, usually. Anyway, some of the comments coming in, including the idea of medication for such callers. Can anything be done? And a lot of maybe more serious things coming in here, including cognitive dissonances. EFR over on the YouTube saying, you have not signed the petition to oppose property values for UMC. Without a vote, there will be a neighbors meeting at Westside's third pole in Belvedere at 6 p.m. this evening. They need 25,000 signatures. Working on some things with you on that point, actually, here. No, I will not be signing the petition because I kind of can't the way we do things. So don't take that as my support or lack thereof for it, honestly. We will talk about it in due course. Make no mistake. And more comments. A lot of people chiming in over on the social media, as of course does happen. RJ, Kathy Codry, Ione Graham, Robbie Flores, EFR, Jay Visconti, Flaco Jimenez, and Sean Gardner. Flaco getting falling into, is that Chinese or Japanese? I was never good at telling the difference there. Manda Mankanda, Sean Gardner, if I didn't say it already, and John Brazelton, and a whole lot more. Also dropping those likes and reacts, we do appreciate. We do, of course, have Louis Pinato, Matt Olson, Ion Grimm, Robert Haynes, Ida Beza Gardner, Monica Cervantes, Robbie Flores, and Flaco Jimenez. And if you want to drop your comments over there, more than welcome to. And yeah, a whole lot of comments there. You should see them for yourself is the best way I can say it. We pop some up on screen and read some of them, of course, here. But then, of course, we got the calls going on right now. The line's full up at the moment again here. But if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Before I get to that, I just want to mention a little bit more about that polling here because I don't want to do the whole tease forever thing. So Dallas Morning News and again the University of Texas at Tyler, again showing that their poll between August 1 and 7, surveying 1,300 and change, closer to 1,400 registered voters with a margin of 0.28 percentage points, showing that, again, Governor Greg Abbott, incumbent, of course, here, leading former U.S. Representative Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke by 7 percentage points or 46 to 39%. And a little bit more interesting analysis actually coming out of that report specifically about how kind of painting a path forward of what it would actually take for O'Rourke to overtake the incumbent here in this case, saying that he would have to win over independents and women in suburban GOP districts, at least some of the analysis here, and including a GOP Collin County precinct chair, Kyle Sims, saying recently warned his Facebook followers that, quote, Collin County is turning blue. And an Axios story over the weekend concluded what has been some analysis going on that Abbott is the clear favorite to win in most analysis here, but it could be closer than it looked in January because of some of those wedge issues or some of those changes, those things that may have not totally repainted the landscape, but have certainly made it more complicated and more fraught than it was even at the start of the year here. So some more interesting things on that, on some of those specific issues, such as Roe v. Wade, SCOTUS rulings when it comes to bill gun control and related things, Texas power grid, charter or private schools, border and immigration issues on the state level. So a lot of different analysis going on here. So this race will continue to evolve and we'll keeping an eye on it, of course, here. Well, let's go back to those phone lines again, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Make sure you put the 915 on there. We do have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Barbara, thanks for joining us. Barbara, you there with us? Do we have an issue there? Okay, we're going to try putting Barbara back on hold there. Maybe we'll try someone else. In the meantime, we'll try Andrew on the west side. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much. Talking about crime increasing, especially in the borderland.
Yeah, I mean, it's a concern. It's been hard to analyze, absolutely, but we've given some of those facts, figures, and even just this recently here, even if it's, I guess, technically kind of anecdotally, there's, the incidents, the fact that these, particularly those couple of guys, teenagers, did it for about a month, robbing at least a number of places. 15 is the number given back out by police within that kind of spate, is concerning.
Yes, it sure is. Especially, I can tell you, when we treat crime as a mental illness or trying to treat it by vis-a-vis mental illness, these individuals are just emboldened even more.
Okay, interesting perspective you have there. I know that there's kind of a debate going on between the idea of punishment versus rehabilitation, but kind of sounds like you're coming maybe a little bit more down on the side of the former there.
Well, yes, because I've seen it used. I've seen treatment used versus punishment. The continuum of sanctions is what it's called, and many people see that as, well, hey, they're not gonna they're gonna give me every break I can get until the very end. But then again, who is giving victims the break?
That is true, and why some of the analysis and discussion coming out of some of those, well, the local cases that are being dismissed due to a lack of action within prescribed periods of time there, the impact on the victims, and that part has been both part of some of the advocacy organizations in our area and the DA herself and the organization around her focusing on those points as well.
Yes, well, it is frustrating for law enforcement when you're out there doing the reports, you're collecting evidence, and these people are coming back on the street, or the cases are not filed in time, and the statute of limitations expires. It's a waste of resources.
Yeah, don't know if any of those, I mean, it hasn't been exactly part of it. Essentially what the DA is maintaining in her office is that they will refile if necessary and file charges on those cases that are not outside of the statute of limitations. So I wouldn't be able to say 100% for certain if any of those cases have fallen outside of even that bound. A lot of them within the 180 days kind of time when action has to happen, actual charges brought, etc. Those kinds of things, or further action from the DA, whatever stage it may be in, that leading to a number of these, if not a majority of those situations, and the dismissals being sought by, again, the public defender's office in this case here, but would not be able to say for certain, but fairly from the response from the DA, not seeming to indicate that any of these cases are already outside of the statute of limitations.
Well, either way, on any misdemeanor case in the state of Texas, you have 2 years to present an information. Felonies, 2 years to 10 years to,
right.
In some cases, to present an indictment. On several cases, major felonies, there are no statute of limitations. So it just depends. But what I also wanted to say concerning this smuggling, well, Biden gave people an open invitation to cross the border, so it's no surprise that these kids that are being recruited by the cartels want to make money.
Yeah, I mean, the money factor here cannot be discounted. We're often talking about many of the impacts, the resource strain on here, so we often talk about money that way, but that's why I was very interested to see in some of these further, the affidavits and those things coming out in those charges of specifically, again, those two that were charged in that rollover that led to the deaths of at least 2 and many more being injured here in on the Upper Valley, or actually was it Santa Teresa? I think it might be Santa Teresa in this case that led to that rollover here. Yeah, that they were making, it may have been $500 per person that they were transporting up to Albuquerque previously, or may have been $500 per person per each. That's a little bit unclear to me, because it was one of the brothers said that he was paid $500. So it may have been a grand total, given that they were, teaming on this. So that's a lot of money. And we've often said here that the incentives for the cartel is almost entirely monetary. Sure, maybe someone has a larger political goal, but cartels seem to, and in general, revolve around money and how much they can make off of it, which is why they have this focusing on. And they've been shall we say, expanding their services because they figured that, yeah, if we're offering essentially, Coyote Uber, we can charge that much more.
Yes, sir. Now, let me respond real quick to Comrade Raul and Foolish Frankie. Yes, in their eyes, yes, Biden has accomplished a lot with these, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act. But these people are not, Biden himself and the people, the Democrats in Congress, they are not paying attention to the Congressional Budget Office.
Yeah, there's been some analysis of it, but also I know that we're going to be looking at quite the nationwide tour, and essentially all the campaigns are going to be dining out on this throughout. I mean, this is going to be the major line headed into the midterms. I don't think that's a secret or to be unexpected at this point here. Whether or not it actually, let's get to some of the finer points that have been being brought up, such as, anything involving the IRS. Anyone touting that is probably going to find themselves not doing well with that line. But more specifically, the fact that a lot of these things are going to take some time to come into effect, don't come into place until, 2023, 24, 25, or even 26 in some case. If that's my understanding so far, might make it a little bit more fraught. At the very least, I'll say they do have something to campaign on besides, well, like the January 6th hearings, which would have been just an even bigger mistake in its own right.
Well, in regard to what you're saying, remember, if concerning the IRS, and it's only going to affect certain individuals. Well, remember, if you like your insurance plan and your doctor, you can keep it. Period.
Yeah, again, if it's not actually in the law, like written down, black and white, saying that you're just going to treat it as well, I'm sure it'll work that way. I don't trust that in a contract. Why would I trust that legally? So that's why I have a little bit of, sure, I am nowhere near that $400,000 per year bracket they're talking about. And I'm assuming most listeners are. If you aren't, congratulations to you. But even in that case, I have concerns about it actually staying in that level of the atmosphere and not coming a little bit down closer to earth where the rest of us live.
Granted. And one last point. Well, of concern to me is a 15% tax on corporations. Okay.
Yep.
As I've told people before, corporations are in business to make money. They have an obligation to stockholders, investors, and even the retirement funds of the people that work for them. So when you start see people out there, when you start seeing a reduction in hour or in your hours, or you see a reduction in the amount of people you have employed, and people going applying with registering with the Texas Workforce Commission. Hey, you guys on the left, don't say I didn't tell you so.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said there. I remember a business professor back in college telling me that just in a strict analysis, that legally most corporations are essentially psychopaths, that they have one goal in mind, that they may have other things, but it all comes down to improving the bottom line here. It wasn't exactly a negative analysis of it, but rather you have to understand the very nature of the way that laws are written about what corporations are even allowed to focus on. So, corporate governance, corporate outreach, corporate citizenship, all those kind of things are all down to what makes the bottom line better. So if you don't think those costs are going to get passed along, I have several bridges to sell you.
Yes, sir. Anyway, Andrew, I turn the mic back over to you.
I appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Thank you.
All right, tell you what, we're going to go ahead and take that break now, reevaluate who we got on the line here, because if we got some people back that we're expecting or not, in any case, if you want to call in, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, everyone. This is Robert Olguin with your KFOX 14 News Update. The Socorro School District fired its chief of police on Tuesday night. The Socorro Board of Trustees voted 4-2 last night to terminate the contract for Jose Castorena. Earlier this year, he was placed on administrative leave. Administrators would not comment on why he was fired. He's been employed with the Socorro ISD for 26 years. A public defender in El Paso County has filed to dismiss 435 pending cases because the time for El Paso's DA to to indict the suspects is running out. Kelly Childress said that about 190 cases have already been dismissed in the past 2 days. The cases involve misdemeanors and some felonies, including DWIs, assault on security officers, drug possession, and cases involving people accused of family violence. DA Yvonne Rosales says her office is still capable of filing charges as the cases are still within the statute of limitations, which can range from 2 to 10 years. This has been your KFOX 14 News Update. I'm Robert Olguin.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
On the US 54 southbound at Ramp D near I-10, there's a rollover accident that's blocking the right interchange ramp. 5-minute delay, stop and go traffic there. Gateway north at Paisano, another crash that's blocking the left lane and the turnaround lane to Gateway south is closed. And the I-10 is slow eastbound from Trans Mountain down to the 54 Patriot. You can expect 15-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
A tropical low to our south and west will bring more clouds, rain, and cooler weather to much of the area. Expect a mostly cloudy sky tonight with a 40% chance for some scattered rain and a few embedded storms. Overnight lows will also cool into the middle 60s in Las Cruces and upper 60s in El Paso. Coming up tonight, we'll talk about how long this cool and rainy pattern will last. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Kira Miner.
This report is sponsored by Indeed.com. Fall into autumn hiring with Indeed. Their all-in-one solution makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Sponsor a job and immediately get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit.
A construction site is a noisy place where things can be misinterpreted. We need to redo the drywall. It can sound a lot like,
rewire the hole? They're firing, Paul.
wait, what did I do? Or even,
Install a waterfall. Whose dumb idea was this?
be on the same page at every stage with Autodesk. From the designers to the field crew to the owner of the finished building, Autodesk Construction Cloud gives everyone clarity. Now, how about that drywall?
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org. Tune in to the El Paso History Radio Show this Saturday, 10 to noon, here on 690 AM with your host, Andrew J. Polk, brought to you in part by Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan Drive. That's the El Paso History Radio Show, 10 a.m. Saturday, right here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
This week, Red Pilled America delves into the story behind what really happened with President Nixon. Understanding the ignored truth behind his story reveals a dark mission you need to know about. Listen to Red Pilled America every week on the free iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. Keeping you informed and up to date. El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM. News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am, of course, your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of stuff we're talking about here today, and we'll, of course, continue to do so. A lot of ways to get at us. We have that phone line open, if full up at the moment, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. And a lot of comments coming in here, primarily over on the YouTube right now, but you can find us Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. We make it available to all of y'all, such as people doing in a lot of different ways here, including someone commenting from Ukraine, maybe? Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll take a look at that later. But in any case, some of the further points being brought in here, Kathy, Codry, and RJ saying that Democrat policy usually taxes medium to small businesses while big corporations work out the tax code. Yeah, that happens to be usually the difference whenever you have a whole department of attorneys and accountants and everything in between able to just work out how they can figure out how to offshore, move profits away. Yeah, it doesn't, I don't have that. I'll say that much here. Kathy saying, yeah, lobbyist loopholes tend to be a part of it, which is why things like a flat tax are kind of not exactly, because nothing is really like, oh, this would be great, but like more appealing. Even if Mondo Moncada over on the over on the Twitch stream saying abolish the IRS. I'm not saying I disagree with it. I'm just saying I'm not going to hold my breath in the meantime about that happening. In any case, let's back to those phone lines now. Again, that number 915-544-5876, 544 KTSM. We do have Barbara on the west side here with us right now. Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew, for taking my call. I apologize about putting you on pause.
That's all right.
I just want to make a comment. Liz Cheney, for Frankie's information, voted 90% of the time with President Trump, and all of a sudden she turned her back on him. Who knows why? Secondly, on the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIP Act, last year the Biden administration approved 88% of the applications to send our semiconductors, aerospace components, artificial intelligence technology, and other items to China. And that's what is it doing? It's benefiting China's military interests and empowering them and making them stronger. Now, the CBO and the Wharton School of Business have both said that this act will not reduce inflation. As a matter of fact, one of the administration's economic advisors this morning on television, this is what he said: a year from today, inflation will be rising slower. He didn't say inflation is going to be going down.
Yeah.
He just said it will be rising slower, and that's for Raul's information. And regarding the IRS, they're going to have more employees than the DHS, DOJ, and the Pentagon combined. Regarding, I think he said that gas was plummeting. I don't know if he said gas or inflation, but I'll address both of them.
Yeah, sure.
Gas was $2.12 when President Trump left the office. We are still paying over $4 a gallon for gas. Inflation, there is still a 3.5 difference between payroll, our income, your paychecks, and the inflation rate. In July, inflation was not zero like Biden said, it was 8.5. So this is how they fool the public. They think that we're dumb. You know, we've all heard that statement, you've got to spend some money to make money.
Sure.
Well, this is what Manchin said today, that now that he said, well, we never said it was going to help anybody soon, but you can go out and get credits for energy savers for your dishwashers, for your washing machines, and other appliances. So what they're saying is everybody go out and incur debt you can't afford, pay an interest rate you can't afford because they're going to be higher too, continue to pay gas at a higher rate than we've ever paid before. So this act is not what it is. And regarding President Trump dividing our country, that is so far from reality. Our country has never been so divided until this president. Well, should I say the crack started with Obama presidency, and it started, within a week or two with Beergate. And we went downhill since then. Mm-hmm. And now Biden divides us by color, by race, by ethnicity. He hires with affirmative action. He has divided the country with this transgender, boys being in our girls' sports. And now that I get to that, I would like to remind everybody that we have till September the 12th to go online to the regulations.gov website and put in our public comments for Article 9. And it's really important, and this is why it's important. The Biden administration is threatening to withhold funds from South Dakota for the children's school meal program unless they allow boys and girls rooms and boys and girls sports. That's how important it is for us to go in and put in public comments opposing boys and men being in girls and women's sports. We have to save our women's sports. And that's how he is dividing our country, Raul. He has no inclination to unite our country. Everything he does divides our country, no matter what policy he's talking about. If he's hiring, you've got to be black female. If they're giving monies to the federal monies to schools, you've got to do this or you don't get that. Charter schools, you've got to submit your programs, you've got to follow the public school curriculum, or you don't get grants for your technology that's out there for all schools. I mean, talk about division. You can't even, I could go on, but I really want to talk about Ivan Rosales and the 435 pending cases that will eventually be dismissed. And the problem I see, and I was reading the website and stuff, the problem I see with what they are doing, and I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, maybe somebody in your audience is that can call in and give us some more insight. With all these cases that they're dropping, some of them have TROs, temporary restraining orders, especially on the domestic violence side. It's very critical that those TROs just aren't wiped away with the cases that they're dismissing. I wonder if there's a possibility of dismissing a case that keeping a TRO active, because you have men who abuse their girlfriends, their wives, their children. There's a reason for a temporary restraining order, and it all comes down to fear. So and then I read that she dismantled the domestic violence division. And there's some conflicting information. She says they haven't. Others say they did because there aren't any attorneys assigned to that division or task force. I don't know what they refer to it.
Right.
But that was a critical component for domestic violence, to protect families and give them assurance that there is somebody out there still concerned about them, still working on their case, and will still protect them. And so I'm hoping maybe somebody knows more about it than I do, but that's a very important case. And TROs are not just for domestic violence. I have a friend who somebody went to his house with a gun. So we live in fear. And for the district attorney's office to be dismissing these cases because they have failed to act on them, I think is shameful. She promised lots of change. She promised running the department better. And I really believed in it, but I'm not seeing that, which is disappointing.
Well, so to kind of, I'm not an attorney either, but to partially answer your question anyway, further from our news partners over there at KFOX 14, they spoke with the Child Crisis Center, very involved in those, particularly, the family and domestic violence kind of situations here. So Enrique Davila, the CEO there, said that protective orders can go a long way to keep the family safe, but saying, quote, directly to him, quote, if the cases are dismissed, well, then that protective order is also dismissed. Going on to say a little bit later, you have to start all over again. You have to go back to the DA's office and try to prove, hey, I'm in danger. Can I get a protective order? They're going to ask if you have police report and arrest. You have to start the cycle all over again. So that's some of the commentary coming in from other organizations or community on your exact point there.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's troubling because that's going to take time.
Yeah.
Everything takes time in the legal system, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does. The whole speedy justice is a fleeting concept. It has seemed to be for a while.
The wheels of justice spin slowly.
Absolutely here. So, well, thank you very much for the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Thank you, Andrew.
As well. I guess the one thing I'll say further here is that I wouldn't necessarily point at any one presidency. I mean, there are certain points that I'm sure have divided people more than others, but I want to say that the point that I really look at in our modern era of the divisiveness, and I do somewhat contend the idea that we have never been more contended. We did have a literal civil war happening. So shooting at people from other states, I'm going to call ever so slightly more divided, but politically divided here. I'll say that I think the recent era of it came about whenever someone decided that as opposed to having to work with, hold your nose and work with another party, just ignoring them entirely and doing whatever the hell you want and pushing it through on the own force of will, I want to say that's probably a part of it here. Anyway, and a lot of commentary coming on some of those points here. Let's get at least one more call in. We do have Kevin on the east side here with us right now. Kevin, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Andrew. I have a little bit of cheerful news, a little pleasant story.
Okay.
Relate concerning the El Paso tax assessor collector, Mr. Gonzalez, his office. My wife and I were down there on Friday trying to get a very simple matter with our car registration resolved, and we had to sit there along with everyone else in the room. There were no seats empty for 2 hours. And, of course, I was disgruntled when I finally came out of the place. One woman was working very diligently, but she could handle only so much.
Sure.
And when I came home, I wrote an email to Mr. Gonzalez and said, look, I like the fact that you have your office over here on the east side as a convenience to us people who live here, but Why does it take 2 hours and so on and so forth? That was Friday. On Monday morning, I received an email from his chief deputy tax assessor, Angela Brinkley. She was very kind. And she gave me 10 or 11 offices where I could get the same transactions done, full service offices here in El Paso with their address, phone numbers, etc. And I'm very happy about that. And I told her in a subsequent email, I said, look, this is really good because civil service, it's a rough business. People have complaints, and they just complain, such as many people, for example, as you know, call up your show and complain about this and complain about that. If that information gets into the hands of the right people, perhaps they can do something. And this Miss Angela Brinkley explained that many of the staffing problems that they have, personnel problems, were due to when COVID started, they had to hire new people after that, little by little, and train them up so they know exactly what they're doing. And it's been taking time. And she was very thorough in her explanation, and I'm happy about that because we can only do so much, but a person is really not doing anything just by yelling into the wind and saying, oh, I am so angry at this office and everything. Well, let them know about it in a nice way, and maybe they'll do something about it. And they do what they can. And I'm very happy that the response was very rapid. And they're aware of the problem, and they're working on it to the best of their ability. And I told them so. I really appreciate that. A little good news there, I hope, for you.
No, fair enough. I mean, yeah, the whole idea, I often talk about transparency in government, but, responsiveness, I pull pretty close to that in terms of how I value or judge the value, rather, of any particular office or elected official specifically. So happy to know about that responsiveness, like that level. It almost feels like a little bit of a ray of sunlight. I'll say that here. And also the idea comes to mind, you do tend to catch more, flies with honey, or bees with honey than with stink anyway. There's another word I can't use there, but well, happy to know that you had an experience that was resolved satisfactorily for you involving that.
Yes. And again, I'm really happy about that. And I just wish that, more people would stop the name calling, particularly on your show. I mean, we have political differences and all that.
Oh, sure.
But call this and that and this and that. I laugh at it. I have a lot of fun listening to your show. But I think their anger would be better directed into something constructive, and let's work together and get the problem solved instead of just cursing each, so to speak.
You're going to find much agreement with me on that point. Well, thank you very much for the point in the call. You have a good one there.
You.
All right, have a great one. We're going to take that next break right now. Coming out of the break, we'll get towards closing up the show. Tell we got coming up for you, and of course, what you can expect more. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
An earlier crash blocking the left lane Gateway North at Paisano Drive has still got the turnaround lane closed and the left lane closed on Gateway North, and a backup. 16-minute delays on the 10 eastbound from Trans Mountain to the 54 Patriot. A rollover accident on the 54 southbound at Ramp D near the I-10. Expect delays there. And an accident blocking the right lane, Joe Battle Boulevard southbound at Pebble Hills. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by The Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
We're going to get insight and perspective with the great Laura Ingram, host of Fox News, The Ingram Angle. She joins me on The Truth with Lisa Booth. And listen to The Truth with Lisa Booth every Monday and Thursday and throughout the week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Almost 3 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier. I'm Martin Hoke, and I invented Navage, the world's only nose cleaner that helps flush out airborne germs with powered suction. But what do doctors have to say about Navage? Here's Dr. Tonya Farmer, a board-certified ear, nose, and throat specialist.
Most airborne allergens and viruses enter through your nose. When that happens, it can cause congestion and irritation, and that just makes you feel miserable. You can get a cold, you can get flu, sinus infections, or even worse. Flushing your nose with a saline solution is the most effective way to flush all of those dangerous threats out of your nose. So now when patients come in my office, I tell them I highly recommend that you use Navage on a daily basis for overall good health and wellness.
And Navage is all natural and drug-free at Navage.com, Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E. Clean nose, healthy life.
Are you one of those people who thinks it's okay to drive stoned? I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit? It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is, your reaction times slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
Staples has everything for school at great prices. So this year you won't go back to school. You'll be ready to move forward and build that papier-mâché volcano.
I am not cleaning this up.
Ooh, yeah. Jefferson High School grads, and especially you if you graduated in 1972. Your 50th reunion is here. Can you believe it? All grads are invited to join the class of 72 on Saturday, September 3rd at the St. Pius X Party Hall, 1050 North Clark Drive, from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. You'll relive the best years in a fun semi-formal event. That's Saturday, September 3rd. For tickets, contact Richard Marufo at 915-539-4853.
M1EP.com. Superior multifamily property management services citywide.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
That's going to about do it for us on the show here today. I want to tell you about a couple of things that we do got coming up for you, focusing more on some of those petitions, even the ones continuing going on, doing some outreach, of course, with that one about the UMC bond and all those kind of things, plus maybe more some discussion about some of these legal issues that keep coming up here. Maybe have some qualified legal officials to talk about it here. I don't really qualify myself here, but I think we have time to squeeze in one more quick call. We do have Rick calling in from the Sacramento Mountains. Rick, we got about 30 seconds. Rick, you there with us?
How are you doing? Yes.
Still all right there.
I'm here. I have 4 issues. The Inflation Act. Biden says we're not inflation. All these Democrats not inflation, and then they pass an Inflation Reduction Act. That's hypocritical. The tickets. This is what I want to say about them releasing, dismissing all the things.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? I got arrested for a ticket that was 10 years old, and they're letting violent people out. Now Abbott using the immigrants as pawns. Biden did it first by opening the border and letting them all in so they could vote for the Democrats. They used them as pawns, so cut that. And now real fast, this is from San Diego News, San Diego County News. 40% of the people that have died, 40% had the vaccination and a booster. Then 80% of the people that have died had one vaccine and sometimes a booster. That's 80% had a vaccine, 47% vaccine, and 3 boosters. San Diego County. I thank you very much. Andrew. Gotcha, Andrew. Love you, El Paso.
Sure thing. Thank you very much for the point in the call there. We'll have to leave it there for today because we're out of time for this program. I want to thank everyone who's tuned in, called in, commented, participated in the show. We'll keep talking about it tomorrow. Again, tune in tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m. right here on News Radio 690 KTSM. In the meantime, I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. Stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles and out on the road. And have a great evening, all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
An earlier crash blocking the left lane Gateway North at Paisano Drive has still got the turnaround lane closed and the left lane closed on Gateway North, and a backup. 16-minute delays on the 10 eastbound from Trans Mountain to the 54 Patriot. A rollover accident on the 54 southbound at Ramp D near the I-10. Expect delays there. And an accident blocking the right lane, Joe Battle Boulevard southbound at Pebble Hills. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
There won't be much substance on your news feed until you add us. Just like us or click on the link at kcsmradio.com. News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook.
future decisions on interest rate hikes will be data dependent. That's the message the Federal Reserve delivered as it released minutes from the July meeting. A 0.75 percentage point increase was approved last month. It comes as the Fed has been steadily raising rates in order to fight inflation. Former Vice President Mike Pence is condemning Republican attacks on the FBI over the search of ex-President Trump's estate in Florida.
These attacks on the FBI must stop. Calls to defund the FBI are just as wrong as calls to defund the police.
Speaking in New Hampshire, the Republican said the GOP is the party of law and order. He noted agents were executing a search warrant from the Justice Department. Pence said criticism should be directed at Attorney General Merrick Garland, not the FBI agents who were following orders. Walmart, CVS, and Walgreens are being ruled to pay